Well, hello everybody. Ahoy mateys. Welcome back. Season 3. Fall is here. You know, we've got pumpkins just shooting out of the ground everywhere. Footballs flying all over the place. It's fall and it's season 3. So thank you so much for being here. Now, we're going to kick off season 3 with a bang. You know, my favorite segment of any show. Props. I spent all day working on this prop. Took off work. Canceled all my plans. Okay? I buried myself in my work because I had to make this prop. I'm going to go get it. Here it is, everybody. I made this. It's a PVC 3 for season 3. A life-size 3. Okay? You know, it's really nice. If you're ever in the situation I am, there's a mnemonic. An E for me is a 3 for thee, right? So that's how I know which way to go. You can get this rare piece of Brian's Basement history for only 492 Brian's Basement bucks. So we're gonna put this over here. Season 3, everybody. Okay. All right. Props. Did props. We're good. So here we are. Season 3. I think I've said it enough. I think you guys get it. But I got some jobs for you, right? You gotta do the work. And so what the job is, 2 things. One, go ahead and say hi in the comments. Drop what you've been doing this week or last week or whatever. You know, good things, bad things, super mundane things. You know, I had to pull out my garden hose. That sounded weird. I had to use the garden hose in the fall. How crazy is that? You know, put stuff like that in there. All right. We've got so that's wait. We already got a thing. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter E and the number 3. That's dang right, Jake. And the other thing you gotta do, so you gotta tell me what's going on with all y'all out there. And the other thing you gotta do is, we're trying to plan the rest of the season. So if there's something you like, and you want to see, you know, put your suggestions down there. We got some song stories. We got one tonight. We've done the song breakdown things. We've done that stupid bass guitar thing I like to do. We can do covers. We can do anything. So if there's a cover you want me to learn, go ahead and drop it in there. We'll see what we can do about it. Okay, so those are your 2 jobs. Tell me what you're doing in the comments. If you got anything you really like or you really don't like, put that in there too. All right, down to business. Tonight, we have a song story for you. Song story, what is that? It's 4 or 5 songs. 4 songs tonight. And they're all tied together with a story. And we play it, and then we talk about it. And tonight, we have a special guest to jump in on the conversation and talk about what's behind the song. Because what we have tonight is called I, Jonah. And this is based off of a sermon that my good friend Jake and friend of the show Jake, he did. He did the sermon about the book of Jonah in the Bible for his church. And it hits on a lot of ideas as far as identity and your place in the world and like your ability to see that. And it was super, I thought it was super cool. I thought it was super relevant. So we'll talk about that later. So just know, this is called I, Jonah. It's on based on a sermon Jake did. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, because you could be watching the presidential debate, but I guarantee you'll learn a lot more from this than you will from that. So thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy it. This is called I, Jonah. Well, I got a tune first, a little anticlimactic. Tell us. No, I'm done. I'm done. Art. Kim says, tell us a joke. This is the joke. All right. story begins in a seaside city with creaking docks and salty winds, where ships come and go with the tides, and the sun bleaches everything it touches. On the docks there is a worker, and he is young and new to the trade. The other workers are grizzled and leathery from years of wood and rope and water. But in his youth is blunt and crude. He pays for ales at the tavern with it. He pries boxes and hoists cranes with it. And he fuels his thoughts with it. The worker watches the captains on the dock, and he craves the medals, and he thirsts for their uniform. He's around ships all day too, so he knows the supplies they keep. And he tells the other workers, oh, he could sail with the best of them. And they laugh at the idea, because the dock and the sea are worlds apart, but he can't understand that relation. What happens when you don't take the time, when you don't take the space to understand your relationship to yourself and yourself to the world, to the docks, to the ships, to the taverns, and to the town? Our subject rises early, determined, full force, to scrape and claw at a dream he had the night before, and he's overwhelmed by a feeling of who he believes he is. I dream a night at the ocean, surrounded by hands on the dock. I've got some big ideas, but they're just sheep in the flock. I try to speak to their hearts, but my words fall on deaf ears. To hell with them all, for all I care, I'm getting the hell out of here. I built a ship out of principle, filled the sails with wind from a page. And if a leak springs in the hull, I've got plenty more board stowed away. No space, no time, all dots, no lines. Sail away, high tide, navigate, closed eyes. The crew is capable and cooperative. They sing their shanties in their native tongue. I can't decipher the lyric, so I teach them one that I've sung. Their words become disjointed, for they are no longer on the same beat. And they revert to their songs of old, and the winds again fill the sheets. At night I pray for the folly, sing a song so clearly words. I give thanks I'm not a sailor, hum a section of my favorite verse. No space, no time, all dots, no lines. Sail away, high tide, navigate, closed eyes. The morning came and we gathered to our tack and drink our ale, swapping stories of histories and everyone's personal tale. They asked me how I'd arrived here. I said, this is my expedition. They have a look of confusion on their faces, as if I didn't answer their question. Dark clouds crowd the horizon, the crew scrambles to prepare. I go retreat to my quarters, I know I got some medals in there. No space, no time, all dots, no lines. Sail away, high tide, navigate, closed eyes. Storm begins the boat, and the crew starts to jettison stores. They go for books in my quarters. I protest, but what happens if we get bored? The first mate barks some orders. I think that they're directed at me. And there's a problem more persistent. I think there could be mutiny. They toss me over to stable the ship, throw me out with my excess boards. I cling for life in the battering waves, praying that I make it to shore. No space, no time, all dots, no lines. Sail away, high tide, navigate closed eyes. He is floating now in greenish waters under gray skies. His ship is sailing off to the horizon. His books are scattering, sinking. Hours pass, and the night is cold, and the day scorches, and his board is slippery and splintered. He hasn't seen a single ship, or a seagull, or a dove. Time is a funny way of forcing reflection. He starts to replay the events. He knows what he is supposed to feel, and he does his best to act it out. He begs for the shore, promises to improve his ways, that he has learned from his mistakes, that he deserves another chance. But the sea is a silent monolith, and the waves with their strange rhythms, like a bouncing of the scales, or a nod, or a shake, or a shrug. He wonders why they threw him over. Ponders on the crew, how ungrateful, how disdainful, what an arrogant thing to do. But he sees his situation, so he offers up a prayer for the sailor's ship and its dangerous trip, while he's gasping for air. And he can't imagine how he looks in our begs for forgiveness, but never apologize. Proud about the quality of his plea for grace. Floating adrift, bobbing in the waves. He's grasping to that old plank, and his fingers are worn to the bone. What a strange fate to be in this place. If only he could have known. And he prays that there be a current to take him back to the shore. To him it seems that he is redeemed, for he's never felt this scared before. And he can't imagine how he looks in our eyes. Beg for forgiveness, but never apologize. Proud of the quality of his plea for grace. Floating adrift and bobbing in the waves. And a current indeed did come, and it swept him off to the land. But waves high and fast are the first ones to crash as he rolls up on the sand. And he can't imagine how he looks in our eyes. Beg for forgiveness, but never apologize. Proud about the quality of his plea for grace. Floating adrift, bobbing in the waves. The dock worker staggers up to the sand. The board floats away in old memory. He approaches the city with caution, tries to hide in the shadows, ashamed. He hears whispers in every wall, expects ambush from every barrel. He's got a hand twitching on his holster, but it contains no gun or powder. And the city is vast and noisy and moving. And he plans for 3 days long of scouting every shipyard, tavern, and bastion to amass himself a crew again. But he is redeemed. He takes comfort. He asks for salvation he received. So surely this, and this alone, is enough to justify his effort. It's a fine line to walk, like walking the plank. He's got to demonstrate that he's learned, but not give up the game. So he begins a search for a crew and a ship to lead another expedition, but this time above the waves. Back at the marina, I am restored and I am renewed. Out there pounding the pavement, gotta find myself a crew. And my reputation precedes me, news of my fate traveled fast. Gotta fight all the rumors, gotta prove I can handle the task. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. And they ask me all these questions. I hold my cards close to my chest, and I gloss gloss over all the bad parts. This charade's all I have left. And they sign up one by one, and my ship is almost ready. I stow extra boards in the bow. I stock the ship's library. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. But it turned out easier than I imagined. I had a crew after one single day. Why did I suffer the fury of the sea for everything to stay the same? Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Words loud, be bold, force down, uphold. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. We set sail in the morning, and I can hardly wait. I got a compass that points to the south, but it's all good to navigate. And when I look in the mirror, I see a captain earning his post. And when I look at the waves outside, I see a remnant of a ghost. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. Show tact, be kind, hold your head up high. Speak loud, be bold, force down, uphold. The sea breezes on his face again, and things are exactly as they were. Things were exactly as they should be, till familiar black clouds shroud the horizon. The lightning cracks and the thunder rolls, and rain falls in sheets on the deck. He retreats to his quarters to shield himself from the cold winds. And the wind blows his first mate over, and then the cook, and then the boatswain, and then the doctor. Every soul was swept into the ocean, and the ship drifted aimlessly in the gale. And he emerged from his quarters, and when the sun broke through the clouds, and he saw the empty deck, and he heard the deafening silence, he let out a shriek of rage. His crew, for which he had assembled so fast, was gone just as quickly, now miles below the surface. He sat up against the mast, and he sulks. He took the three-cornered hat from his head, and he tossed it in the ocean. And he lets the currents take him where they may. Does he do well not to give the time and space to understand his place in the vast world for which he lives? Is he served well by all the excuses he's made up so he can explain his actions and reasons, the tides and the seasons that justify the way he behaves? Does he do well to be blinded to the gifts that were laden in his lap, so that when he succeeds, all that he can see is the world holding him back? Does he do well to be angry? Does he do well to do anything else? For struggle and strife every day of his life, does he do well not to know himself? Does he do well not to know himself? Okay, that's the end. That's it. Jonah. All right. Well, now, we gotta get our special guest on the line. So, Kim's gonna try to give him a call here on the telly, on the internet telly. I just explained her the process. I did not show her. I was just like, you gotta click this. Oh, I hear it. It's such a jam. Hello?
Hi.
Jake!
Hi.
Jake's here. Everybody, we've got friend of the show and Brian's Bucks leader, Jake. Kim, how's the screen share going okay?
I think so.
It's going. Jake, does it look good over there?
Well,
Yeah, I can see things on my end.
He
so
can
that
see
works.
things on his end.
I
That is.
can't see him though.
That's okay. You don't need to see him.
Okay.
Yeah.
He looks good. We all know. Do you have him on the Skype thing?
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
It's saying now it's closed unexpectedly.
Yeah. Get rid of that.
Blah blah.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then, did you do the Skype and Brian scene?
Oh, that.
Ah, there it is.
Oh my
We good now?
gosh.
There you go.
Hey. Okay.
Yay.
We were like,
Hey.
should we do this better or should we just do it like that? And we did it like that. Anyway, what's up, Jake? How's it going?
It's good. How many bucks do I get for being on the
Oh,
show?
dude. I think you're already at like 57 Brian's bucks. So I'm going to give you an additional 3 for being on the show. And
Okay.
and you know, you're in the front line to win this beautiful piece of Brian's Basement memorabilia, the season 3 PVC.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna make me work for that.
Yeah.
three.
Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show, Jake. So before we start, and this is an extremely ironic question, but who are you? Can you introduce yourself to the people out there?
Who am I? I'm Jake. I'm Jake. I used to work with Brian. And,
Yeah.
And yeah, I do things. So I'm actually right now I'm in the process of I'm going through a seminary program. I'm in the process of trying to become a chaplain with the military.
Cool.
And so I did a sermon back in December of 2019. It's December 29th.
Yeah, and we were talking, and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that was like 2 years ago. And you were like,
Right.
no, that was December 2019.
It feels like 2 years ago.
Right. So anyway, so yeah, so Jake, theologian, good blood. He sent me this sermon that he did, and it's a meditation, I guess you could say, on the book of Jonah. And so I thought to kick this, and that's what these songs were. They were about his sermon more so than the book of Jonah. It follows. We'll talk about it anyway. Before we start, I just wanted to say, I just wanted to maybe do a summary of the book of Jonah, and I thought maybe I would do it in the way of from what I remembered of it before the sermon, and then we can pick up on your interpretation of it. Does that sound good?
We could do that. I do have my notes from the sermon, which includes the summary, and I can do a summary if you want me to as well.
Well, okay. Well, let's just say, because it's important that the way that most people learn this story is not exactly what you said, right?
Yeah. How the Jonah tends to be presented is not entirely what's the focus is supposed to be about. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So the way that I understood it, previous to this, is you got this guy Jonah. He's supposed to do something for God, and he doesn't, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that, and he runs away, and then a big fish eats him, and he's like, oh man, that wasn't right, I'm wrong, and then he goes, and then the fish spits him up, and he goes, does what he's supposed to do, and he's a big hero because he found out he righted his way, and he did the right thing, and it was all good, and Jonah is a hero. But that is not what you present in your interpretation of this. And I think, to me, the part that I didn't know about is the fourth book, because that's the one that really the fourth chapter, because that really turns this on its head.
Right. Because like oftentimes when it's presented, people stop after 3. And so normally the way the book of Jonah is presented is almost like this cautionary tale, where it's like, this is like, you shouldn't run from God, because if you run from God, he's going to find a way he'll send a fish after you. This fish is going to swallow you up, and he's going to get you to do the thing that he asked you to do. And then, the thing's going to, you'll do the thing that God wants you to do, and you're the hero. And that is like pretty far from what I think is actually presented in Jonah. And I think what's really in Jonah is something much more beautiful, and kind of amazing, because it really, I think, speaks to an element that we can kind of all relate to in our own humanity, which you see in Jonah. Because like what you
this like the thing that you talked about resonated with me on like a societal and personal level. Obviously, there's a spiritual bend to it, or it is a very like spiritually focused thing. But I thought that a lot of the things that inspired me to write these songs were largely about things that were like very relevant in current events.
Yeah. Because like the thing that I think is, and I think like that actually is probably close to why the book is included in the Old Testament, and why the book was even written down, is that it wasn't so much as like, this is a cautionary tale about why not to run away from God. It was more about like, this is sort of there's like so much that happens in this book, so it's really hard to be like, this is the one thing. But there is definitely a theme there where it's almost like, this is sort of the harm that can come from putting too much value and worth in sort of your identity as an Israelite, or as, or being Hebrew. Like, that was a kind of like a common thing that happened throughout the Old Testament, and you see actually also in the New Testament, a lot of the letters that are written are sort of addressing this form of like Jewish nationalism that is kind of happening, where a lot of the Jews were sort of taking pride in this identity as God's people, to a point where like that was never what God really wanted them to do. They kind of like they were like using it as a way to give themselves status and value and worth. And that wasn't the reason why God made a covenant with Israel to begin with.
Yeah, and that sounds, that parallels so well with this weird flavor of patriotism that's like flying around all over the place, I think, right now. Like that whole concept of like, here's this thing, this is not what it's for, and you're probably doing it wrong by really delving way too far in this identity. So you talk about, can you talk about the moment, just to stick on the kind of like nationalism theme, because that is so relevant and it's going in the world right now. So can you talk about in the book of Jonah, in the first book, his interaction with the sailors and how he demonstrates his nationalism?
Yeah. So the first book is when you sort of see Jonah's interaction with sort of like the pagans, like his view. And actually, I think I'm going to pull up my notes a little bit, because there's a few things. Let's see here. I'm trying to actually get to that part where it talks about that. So first of all, one of the things is like in that time frame, or like in that period, right? Like the whole idea of God and spirituality, like that was such a cultural norm. Like everyone had their own God. And oftentimes too, like when natural things happen, like they equated that to like spiritual forces were at work. And so when the sailors are like in this storm, it's not crazy that their first reaction is like, whose God did we piss off? Like that was actually like a normal thing. And so when they're like doing their best to like right the ship in the middle of the storm, they start asking like their crew members, like, who's your God? Like just start asking everybody, like, what's going on? And so they get to Jonah and they ask him, like, tell us on whose account is this evil come upon us? Like, what's your occupation? Where'd you come from? What's your country? And of what people are you? And so they like ask him all these questions. And his response is, he says, I'm Hebrew. That's like his first go-to is like, I'm Hebrew. And then he said, I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land.
But the first thing that he says is that he's Hebrew. Right. When they're all trying to figure out what the deal is, his first response is probably the most useless of the information that they want. Like, they want to know his occupation. Like, can you fix sails? They want to know what God he pissed off. But the first thing that he goes for is the most useless of all of those, which is his nationality. His tribe, yeah.
Because, like, to him, like, that means something. And to them, they're probably just like, yeah, who cares? Like, like, give me the rest of the information. Yeah. But for him, he's like, I'm Hebrew,
Right.
And like, it sort of plays into, like, because, another thing that I think is also happening too is I think that Jonah is just completely oblivious. Like, I think he becomes sort of a picture of what does it look like to just have no self-awareness. And actually, let me see if I can pull up that really cool quote from Timothy Keller related to that.
That's another. I mean, that's like the other. There's a couple of main themes that I wanted to hit on. And the first one was like that nationalism theme, and I put that in the song as the part where they're asking him where he came from, and the captain replies, "This is my expedition," which doesn't answer the question at all, but it is like that is his identity. So I tried to mirror that in my song too. But really, the focus of the entire thing, I think the main point of this interpretation of the Book of Jonah is the lack of knowing your place or your you call it the relationship to self. So what is the relationship to self, and what is it not? Because that's important too.
Yeah. So and I had mentioned this in the message of like so like when I talk about a relationship with self, like I'm not necessarily talking about like self-care or self-love. Like those I think are they may be related, but like this is kind of like I'm kind of moving those over to the side. When I'm talking about a relationship with self, I'm actually talking about the sort of the act of giving just sort of space and time to be able to like reflect on like what is happening in your life, how are you feeling about it, like how are you processing things. Like it's just kind of like it's a a check on your own self and how you're doing, right? That relationship. Um, and and what was also interesting too is like back in December when I was giving this message, like a lot of these ideas were like fairly new to me. Like I had just started um to work out like what this relationship with self looks like. And think it's interesting that like there's a lot of the things that I learned in December that have actually gotten me through like quarantine and like just with everything crazy going on in the world with the pandemic is like being thoughtful and taking the time to be like how do I actually feel about this stuff, like all the thing, like all this uncertainty that's around here, like how is it affecting me, like what is it, what's happening inside me, why is why are certain things bothering me more than others, and giving that room for that self discovery.
And what does that look like? Like how what are the nuts and bolts as far as how you go about doing that? Or do you have like I'm going to call it maybe a specific example of that, or off the top of your head?
um I mean, I can explain a practice, right? So there's one thing that I'll tend to do sometimes is like I'll think back, I'll like reflect on the day, and I'll think about things that happened, and I almost try to like remove like zoom out of my body when I think about things that have happened early on in the day, and try to be like a third party observer
Oh, I
and
like
just
that.
like looking at myself and asking the question of like why am I acting this way and why am I doing these things.
Oh, I love
So
that.
that's one thing. um and like I feel like, so I think this is going to look very differently. Like I know for me, like personally, like there's a lot of this that's actually, relationship with self is also associated with how I pursue my faith and spirituality, and what am I, how am I approaching prayer and my relationship with God, because like personally, I do think that there's an element of this that like I don't think you can fully understand who you really are without understanding who God is or connecting to God. Um, I think doing it on your own is pretty hard.
Or at the very least, just something, the connection goes bigger than. So once you establish your kind of baseline, and you talk about this, is it's going out. It's about your place in your family, your place in your community, your neighborhood, and the world as a whole, your country, all these things. And you talk about this notion that once you kind of understand this baseline of what you're all about, all of these things all need to simultaneously happen. So it's not like you grow from like self to like family to like units get bigger. It's all at the same time. Everything is like this one big web of relationship.
Right. Yeah. You start to see everything begin to sort of click together, right? Because like um because it's one of those things where if all I did was just hang out by myself all day long, right? And I'm trying to reflect on me, like there's really not much to process there. But when instead, if like I'm putting myself out there, I'm being, what I think is my true self, I'm reaching out to other people, I'm seeking connection, like those actually give more opportunity for there to be friction in all of these elements and these aspects in your life. And one of the things I'm finding too is that like, so not only do you have this like community as far as like where you find yourself physically located in the world of like who is around you and your neighbors and the people within proximity, there's also this element of like citizenship. Like you're part of a larger system, right? When we talk about like politics and government. And I think that like this plays into all of that. I mean, personally, I found that it changes the way I view all of that. Like one of the things, because I'm a crazy person, one of the things I decided to do is just like start following people on YouTube and Twitter that I just like absolutely disagree with.
Oh,
And I follow them because what I'm trying to do is really understand like where are you coming from? Like why do you think the way you think? Like what is the thing that I can do to actually like help you to flourish as a whole person? Even though like you're very much against me, how can I do these things? Um because what I find is that like at the end of the day when you boil everything down, everyone is operating out of some like insecurity and hurt coming from some place.
oh yeah,
Either
totally.
they're afraid of something from, they're afraid that something's going to happen, whether it's the radical left is going to come in and do all of these things. Like there's oftentimes when there's a disagreement, you can almost always boil it down to some human factor.
Yeah,
And if you can see the humanity in it, then you can empathize and relate.
yeah, and that is, I did this thing the last show was my EP release, and the first song on that, Katarina, is basically that notion, and I think that uh, it's it's just funny how those things like with that frame of mind, you can not only possibly uh, you know bridge the divide, but you can also prevent yourself from looking like a total boob, like Jonah does, right? Like it has multiple effects beyond like external. Like it comes back internal too. And I think that that's another one of those things. Like this whole topic of relation to self is like one of the things I heard, and I was just like, wow, like think about like everything that's happening like today, or even like what's going on with me, and thinking about it in terms of that. I think it's just is so useful. It's such an interesting thing to think about. I want to change gears and I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the second chapter a little bit, and I think it's kind of a good segue into it because, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you tell what happens in the second chapter when Jonah's in the whale or fish or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the things I think is also worth bringing up is one of the things that's really cool about the book of Jonah is that it mirrors itself.
Oh yeah,
So like
yeah, definitely.
the first chapter ties to the second, the first chapter ties to the third chapter, and then the second chapter ties to the fourth chapter. On also, this is one of the things that you tend to see in a lot of scripture. Like there's an element of like art and poetry to scripture in terms of how it's written, because oftentimes it was communicated verbally, and so they relied on ways to make things memorable. And so like this is one of the sort of devices that this author uses, is that he does this sort of mirroring thing. And so in
I
the
tried to
second
do
chapter,
that. I tried to do that with mine too. By the way, uh, the tenses are different in 2 and 4 than they are 1 and 3, and the keys are different too. They're the same key and they mirror each other. So that's a fun tidbit. So sorry to cut you off to interject myself in this conversation, but
no, that's awesome. That's so cool. And then I noticed that there's four songs,
there's 4 songs
and
and
you have,
everyone is supposed to represent one of the chapters. Yeah.
yeah, that, which I think is also super cool. So like, so in the second chapter, you have they've thrown him overboard, and at this point, like Jonah has had this like near death experience. Like he's gone to the depths of the earth, like he's gone into the darkness, basically like almost died, and the fish comes and swallows him up and saves him. And in the belly of the fish, he has this. There's a psalm there. There's a song. It's like a prayer that he sings, um, and and it's kind of like, I think it's a beautiful psalm just because, like, I don't know, I like things that that just hit to the heart of like just the raw and real emotion. And so in this psalm he talks about this feeling of like going to the depths and the darkness and being saved and his appreciation for being saved. And then, and then he lifts his voice up to God, and basically he says like, I'm like, he kind of calls out to God and thanks him for what he does, but he never actually apologizes for anything. And also he like puts the blame on, like there's one particular line that I thought was so just interesting. I can't think. I'm trying to find it right now. Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna have to go off the top of my head. It's related to like idolatry. He's like, oh, those other people, they pray to idols.
Right.
But I know about your steadfast love. And actually, if I look up steadfast, there we go. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. So he makes this cry out to God. And the thing that I think is interesting is like, I think this actually shows sort of the place that Jonah finds himself, where I think his appeal to God is genuine, but he's just completely oblivious, even to the point where he can see it, the ways in which other people are like, worshiping false idols, but he himself, he's worshiping an idol and he doesn't know it.
Right.
And so also one of the things too is like, in scripture, we often think of, when we talk about like worshiping idols, we're thinking about worshiping like golden statues.
Yeah.
But there's a reality where it's like anything can turn into an idol. Like you can take a good thing and turn it into an ultimate thing and make it end up being really, really bad for you. So like anything you're putting so much value and worth in, that ultimately just won't save you.
Yeah, it's interesting because and I think you phrase it like this, but he's basically saying a prayer for himself and he doesn't even know it. And like his idol is this definition of God that is in his head that turns out not to be lined up with reality. And I tried to mirror that in the songs, because he's floating in the ocean, and he's thinking about the sailors on the boat, and he's talking how bad they are, how arrogant they are. After that was, and it's the idol is his own kind of his own making inside of his own mind.
Right. And I love the way you presented it. Like I love the first song when it talks about like him looking to the captains and like admiring the medals on their chest,
Yeah.
Like, and then yeah, I noticed that too. Like in that second one is like he's kind of just still blaming the people on the boat, and still can't see the part that he played in what transpired and what happened.
Right. So yeah. So then in the in the third chapter, the thing that is that stands out to me is how he's supposed to go to the city. This is probably my favorite part of the entire thing that I never knew about this book. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. He's supposed to go to this city. Jonah is. He's supposed to go to this city, and they say specifically it takes 3 days to visit this city. Like, it's such a weird detail that they put in there. And then he goes around and he does his deal for 1 day, and it works. And he just half-asses his way through this redemption, and it turns out working, and then he's shitty about it. And I thought, this is like, this just sounds so familiar. Like, this is me. Like, this is me. Like, many times.
Yeah. And like, because like not only does he only spend a day in the city, so like he's only really communicated like a third, but the message is just like, like the picture that I have in my head when I'm reading this part is just him being like, kind of like, God's going to destroy the city,
Yeah,
like
right.
Just like trying to mumble it out.
Yeah, and you said that he basically condenses books and books of knowledge into one sentence. That's just
Well,
like, hey, God's gonna destroy your city. Oh, it worked great. Duh, what a waste of time.
like even yeah, so you have the books of the prophets in the Old Testament, and so Jonah is considered to be among the minor prophets, and even the minor prophets, the words that they've communicated, this word from the Lord that they've received, it expands, much longer than what he's condensed the message down to.
Yeah, so I mean that's my favorite part of the third book. It's just that whole scene. So let's move to the fourth and final.
Well,
Well, yeah,
one other little tidbit about the third book.
yeah,
So often that detail doesn't get presented.
right. I never knew that. It was just like it. He's like he went there. It worked. It was great. He's the hero.
Right.
Everyone's happy. He's not the
Yeah.
hero. He's a piece of garbage.
It's like he did what God wanted him to do. And that's normally like the
Right,
punchline,
right.
the end of it, the end of sermon. Like he did what God wanted him to do. But it's like actually no. If you take a closer look, like he kind of didn't do what God wanted him to do, but still, like in spite of Jonah, but God, like God still showed mercy on the city. Like the message still got out,
Right.
and what needed to happen happened.
It's like you see, like it's like to me, this is me being bitter, I guess. But this is like something really bad in the world happens, like something like really bad, and people are like, "I'm gonna change my profile picture on Facebook to show support." like, I'm just like, what? Like that. Anyway,
Right.
yeah. So let's go on to the fourth. Let's go to the fourth chapter. This is the final one. This is the one I never even heard of prior to looking into this. But it is, I think, this is the chapter that changes. I think it's the one that makes this interpretation very evident. So, what happens in the fourth chapter?
So the fourth chapter basically, I think in the third chapter it wraps up and basically says like the people repented and like they were good. And then the fourth chapter is Jonah basically like he's determined that the city's going to get destroyed. So he goes to the east side of the city and sets up camp and just sits and waits for like the destruction to happen. So he's just like he wants it to happen. He's sitting there and he's waiting. And in the course of him just fuming in his anger, God basically sends like a plant to grow and like shade him and kind of like make him comfortable. So that happens for like a day, and then that night a worm is sent and eats the plant, and so the plant's gone by the next day, and God sends this like scorching wind. And finally, in his discomfort, Jonah cries out to God, and there's another interaction between God and Jonah in chapter 4. And like I think like there's an element where finally like the truth comes out, like what sort of the thing that's just beneath the surface, like just at the core of why Jonah was doing what he was doing, like finally comes out, and he berates God and it's like, I knew you were going to do this. I knew you're gracious and you're compassionate and you forgive wickedness, like, and what's really interesting about this interaction is, so here is Jonah that's actually, he's quoting scripture to God in his prayer to God. He quotes from Exodus, but he misquotes it. He's actually like he's focusing on all of these parts of God where it's forgiving and mercy and patience and like love, but he skips out the part in the same scripture where it also talks about that God so basically that God does not trying to find the actual quote. I'm gonna miss it again. So again, you're gonna get it off the top of my head. But basically, it's like he misses out on the part where God also says that he's justice and he's gonna persecute. Like that ultimately, like everyone will be judged.
Right.
And so like he purposely misquotes God to God because he's trying to maintain this like identity, this picture of God that he has in his head, where he wants God to take action against these. He does not want God to show mercy.
Yeah, he's going through some like serious mental gymnastics, I think is the term we use today to
Right.
describe a lot of the way that people behave to justify their weird actions.
Right. This would be like, because uh, he has his own picture of what it should look like, and he's not like, he's still, he's sort of like blind to what it really is.
Yeah. And so they go through this interaction, and this is kind of what I want to cap it off on is pretty much what God replies to Jonah is like, do you do well to be angry? And to me, it just seems he's saying like, is this just the way that you operate? Like, is this a better way? Is this a better way to operate than to like we talked about before, take the time and space to understand your relationship to self? And he pretty much only like he says some more things to Jonah, but his like he says twice, "Do you do well to be angry?"
Right. So like, because like the first time because like I love the question of do you do well to be angry, because like to me that's very much a question of like where are you, right? Like
Right.
where is this coming from? In the book of Genesis, when after Adam and Eve eat the apple, the very first question that Jesus asks Adam and Eve is, where are you? That's the first question. And I think that's profound, because in that question, I feel like is an invitation to self-awareness.
Yeah.
Just being able to say like, this is where this is coming from. This anger is coming from this place. The second time he asks it, God then presents to him, he sort of readjusts, he uses something that Jonah experiences to readjust his lens and how he's viewing the world and what's happening. Because he then goes into, do you do well to be angry? You're angry at the plant, but is it your place to be angry at the plant? Did you grow it? Like, did you, toil and put in the effort to like grow it out? Like you didn't do anything. The plant just grew. And so he almost challenges Jonah of like, why do you feel justified in your anger toward these people when I'm the one that's actually created them? And I know way more about what's happening in that city than you do. Because he even says, he's like, the people in that city, they don't know their left hand from their right. Like, they don't really know what's going on. In a way, they're like almost as oblivious to Jonah is.
Right.
And he's like, do I do good destroying the city when they're just like, they're doing the best they can,
Yeah,
and then he even says
like you like this plant, but you want me to kill all these people and their cattle.
Yeah. And I absolutely love how the book ends.
Right.
Because it literally ends with God saying, and also their cattle.
Yeah.
And boom, end of sentence.
Right. And the book is over. And I think that like another interesting thing about this interaction is you have two people who are clearly not gelling at all, God and Jonah. But rather like in the book, God doesn't yell at Jonah. God doesn't say like, "Listen up, you stupid bitch." Like he doesn't say that because he's God. Right. But he doesn't chastise him. He doesn't tell him he's wrong. He actually pulls something. He basically like you said, like he invites him in. He says like, look at my perspective on this. My perspective is this is a whole city of people and cattle. And this thing that's this tree. This is like what common ground is made out of, right? And so I thought that was what a useful tool to navigate the polarization and the anger. The presidential debates are going on right now. Like, holy moly! I do not want to get on. I do not want to get on Twitter or Facebook right now. And I think that it's when I feel angry and upset, like, do you do well? Is this serving you? Like, is this what you are? Like, like you said, where are you right now? Take that third person lens that we talked about before. Take a look. Where are you? You know.
Or, and even just being able to say, like, because I think it's fun. It's like emotions. I feel like are important. They're like the barometer of like what's happening, both like physically and also, my take on it is like it's a barometer for what's happening inside your soul. And so like just being able to know that like I'm feeling mad or scared or whatever, like just being in a place where you can acknowledge these emotions that you're having and then give the space to like figure them out and to, like try to see where they're coming from. Not necessarily like try to make them go away
Don't
or
try
push them.
or fix them, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like just give them that space for them to do their thing and then you can figure out like what's happening. You know? There's a thing that happens in the Psalms. It actually happens more often than not, where it's called the Psalms of Lament, where it's just lamenting.
Yeah.
It's just basically cries out to God to say like, this is horrible. Like I think like when a lot of like the Black Lives Matter, like when the Black Lives Matter stuff is going, and it's still going on, right? Like
Oh yeah.
when I look at these like injustices that are happening, my response to those things is like I can lament. I can cry out and say like this is not fair. I don't want to push it away. I don't want to pretend like it doesn't exist. I
Right.
can engage this, and I can also see the parts in way like I can see the ways in which I'm a part of this.
Right.
You know, um, and then be able to like kind of be present to what's happening in my own context, and be able to be a force for good in that way.
Right. Yeah, and I like the reason why this resonated with me is just all of the things just to tie a bow on it. It's coming from the nationalism, introducing yourself by your tribe first, to the finding your relationship with yourself to the world, to the letting things sit, taking that third person view, and all of that. I just think is so useful to keep in mind when you feel anxious or you feel scared, because of all of the crazy things going on in the world right now.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that like there's an element of Jonah's situation in which like because like Nineveh was part of the Sumerian nation. Samaria was really nasty to the Israelites. Like you know they did some pretty bad things, armies conquering a lot of their cities. And so there is a chance that Jonah was like personally impacted by actions that were taken by the Sumerian nation.
Sure.
And so like I think there's another element of this too where it's like there's going to be things that happen to you, right? There's just like stuff that happens to you that's horrible and that's not great. But like Jonah taking out his frustration with the Sumerian nation on Nineveh isn't necessarily like these aren't the people that conquered him. They were part of the. If anything, like they were conquered by Samaria, and now that's how the city became part of their nation.
Right.
So I think being able to recognize, to get to that place to recognize that, like, be able to process the things that are happening to you, and then also to be able to like put it into context and not lash out against other people.
Right. Don't paint a wide brush.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about this stuff. I loved when I first heard it. I didn't know what to expect, and I knew immediately that I wanted to write songs about it. So thanks for taking the time and sitting down and talking to us and all the audience about the the context where this is all coming from. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So if you can just stay on the line, we're gonna shut it down and then we can chat after the show. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Well, that's Jake, everybody. Brian's Basement Bucks world champion. Thank you so much to Jake for coming on the show. Thanks for everyone for watching. Oh, let's read some comments before we go. We got. Hey, Donnie says I like your hair. Hey, Donnie, thanks, man. I like your hair too. And then says, he says, I know this isn't related, but I had this tab open for 2 hours. And then when everything started, I was like, where's this music coming from? Unknown, you're like those people that camp out in the street to get tickets to a show. Like you're like the streaming version of that. So I appreciate your dedication. Thanks for tuning in. Jen's in the chat. Hey Jen, how's it going? Hey Kristen, everybody. Oh, thanks guys. We want. Oh God, my comment. So Jake says I want to hear Kim's joke. Kim says she's got a joke about Jonah.
Oh, yeah.
Kim's got a mic. There you go. Let's see it. Let's hear it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So a little girl's science teacher, was talking about whales. And so the little girl pipes up and she's like, "Hey, Miss Smith, I know something about whales." And the teacher's like, "Okay, Susie, what's going on?" And Susie's like, "Whales can swallow people, just like Jonah and the whale." And the teacher's like, "No, that's not true. It's physically impossible. While they have big mouths, they have really small throats. Like, just not a thing. Sorry, sweetheart." So the little girl's like, "Well, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah myself if he was swallowed by a whale." And the teacher goes, "Oh, okay. Well, what if he doesn't go to heaven?" And she goes, "Well, then you can ask him."
All right. Yeah. Give yourself the claps on that one. I think that's a great way to cap it off. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week with some more shenanigans. No one put their suggestions in, so that means I'm just gonna come up with something dumb. So that's on you guys. Again, welcome to season 3. Thanks always to producer Kim, and as I always say, be safe out there. Do something nice. Just do something, or just do something weird. Just do something weird this week. No burden to be nice. Just be weird. And then thirdly, do something fun for yourself. That can go with that second point there. So yeah, thank you. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.